and let's get in the studio and join with my guest. Miguel, how are you?
Fine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well, and you are crystal clear as well. So you've got all your things together. I see you've been put into the storeroom of the local clothes factory. Is that right? I can see the coat hangers in the background. So Miguel is an MVP, a very talented guy, excellent developer. How are you going? What is it you're going to talk about today? Porting a Python REST client app to Delphi using AI. Is that right?
Yes. Hold on just
Okay,
1 second.
sure. So what will happen, because we didn't get a chance to practice this beforehand, is you'll click on share and to share your screen, and then it'll appear here, and then I'll enable it. And then what we'll do, I'll swap it over to you so that you can do your thing, and then I'll leave you to it. How long do you think you're going to be talking live for, roughly?
Should be the presentation should be around 30, 40 minutes.
Okay.
And questions and answers, I don't know. Depends on whether the presentation is clear enough or not.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. All right. Well, what we'll do at the end of it, if you let me know, then I'll come back in again. But I won't hang around whilst you're doing your sharing. You ready to share your screen?
Yes, I'm preparing right now as we speak. Let me just
Cool.
put it in.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Check our streams as well, because we don't have as many people live, which is odd.
okay.
So make sure that producer Martha has not made a mistake. I don't think she has. So excellent. There you go. And it says add to the scene, so I can add your screen. So I think we can see your desktop. Your background is yes. Okay, I see what it is. All right then. Do you want to leave your camera on or off? I don't mind either way.
You can turn it off during the presentation. I'm fine to turn it on again
Okay.
afterwards.
I think I'm not sure how. Let me just turn myself off, and then I'll try and turn your.
Otherwise, I can just turn myself off here. You just did so. Okay, off we go.
Yeah, it's all good. We can hear you. We just can't see you, which is correct.
All right, fine. Okay. Hello, everybody. My presentation today is how to port a Python REST client application to Delphi using AI. First of all, as usual, my name is Miguel Angel Moreno. I'm an electronics engineer. I'm also IoT systems designer and architect. That's my main focus right now. But at the same time, I'm also a software developer, systems integrator, and longtime Embarcadero MVP. Okay, first, this is the agenda. Number one, the software that we are going to convert runs just fine. Why convert it? Then there's the traditional approach to converting a programming language from one language to another. Then what conversion tools are out there. Then the AI approach. And the most funny part is a real life case that I recently had to face, and the reason, the motivation of this presentation. Then conclusion, and then questions and answers. All right. If the software runs just fine, why convert it? Well, this is the infinite question when you're a software developer. There's always the need to convert something just because you see it. Oh, this was done in Visual Basic 6. Oh, this is made in COBOL. Oh, blah, blah, blah. But if the software is running, there's an old saying that says, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. So why is the motivation that we need to convert from one programming language to another? Well, I just put together a simple list. One of them is the application is outdated, yeah, but it's still in use by active use. It's still in use and has a lot of user base. It needs to be updated though, because either the system it runs on it is obsolete, it's going to be decommissioned, or a key feature that was missing now requires to be added and is a must. and the original development environment is no longer available, or it will not be in the future. So any of these reasons are forcing you to just rewrite an application. And one of them, which happens if you've been long enough in this industry, now you know that the one of systems becoming obsolete, of decommission, really happens in a very short amount of time. And suddenly a program that was fine, you are forced to move it up. Another reason is the application is active and up to date, but that same application needs to be ported to another system or platform. The most common thing, which most of us have been facing, is 20 years ago, you wouldn't even think about having your application in a mobile phone. No way. But what about today? Then today, your application that has been running fine in your user's desktop, now they are forcing you to have a similar version that runs on their mobile phones. So the new platform doesn't necessarily have the same programming language and development environment that you used to have in the past. So this is another motivation that forces you to convert an application to another programming language. And last but not least, I want to use a commercial open source library or service, but the sample applications provided by the authors or by the vendor are written in a different programming language or development environment. They won't care on giving you one in the programming language that you use or the one that your project needs it on. This is very common, and actually this is the reason, the motivation of the program that I will show you as a sample, because I had a recent project that needed libraries where the sample applications were not written in Delphi. And finally, but not least, why convert it? Well, just for fun. Sometimes you just want it to prove something, that an application that was written in, I don't know, .NET or Java or whatever can also be written in Delphi or any other language of your choice. So, of course, this is just for the self-inflicting guys that like to punish themselves, but it's well worth it of a cost to make a conversion. Now, let's see what are the different approaches to converting a programming language from one to another. The traditional one, which is the cumbersome that most of us have been facing before AI, is more of a re-engineering effort more than a direct translation. We would think, or someone that is not is not a software developer, would simply think, oh, it's like a French to English, just convert the words, convert the syntax and whatever keywords you have in Java or C++ or whatever to the other programming language, and that's it. But we know that is not that. Even though they are programming languages, the actual structure, the syntax, and the logic itself doesn't necessarily translate on one-on-one. So you need to analyze the source language features, you need to identify libraries, and in many cases, the runtime library, which is the base library that each platform or developing language has, then translate that functionality line by line or module by module, re-implement constructs, use design patterns as much as you can where the translation is needed. So this is the traditional approach, and usually this has been very, very time-consuming. There's also conversion tools which have arose in the industry due to this need. They are useful, but in practice, everybody has faced at one point in time that these tools are good only for the initial step. In other words, they will reduce the burden by translating the easy parts to translating the syntax, the basic syntax, the if-thens, the cases, whatnot. But after that, you still need to go and take a deep dive into the translated source code and polish it yourself. So it's only a little bit of time saver, but it's not a complete solution. By no means it is a solution that you can rely on. It's only speeds up some part of the process, especially the mechanical ones, which is translating some part of especially the syntax, but still you need to go deep into the program after it's been converted. And voila, in recent years, this didn't exist, but now we have it. It is the AI approach. In this approach, introduces a completely different process compared to the previous ones. Now, you are not running a blind tool or dumb tool that simply translates one to one. You're talking to a very clever and complex algorithm that is behind the AI, especially the generative AI, and then you are interacting with it. So it becomes like a back and forth session where you ask the AI model to do the conversion, and then you do it in cycles. You do it by feeding one function, class, or logical block at a time, otherwise you will clog it. And then you ask the AI to translate the code to the target language, preserve the logic, and wherever possible, use idiomatic patterns in the target language. But even though the AI is very clever as a tool, the key part of this is you. You are actually half of the equation to make AI worth it. Now you also need to add some context and correct output by providing related variable definitions, some sample input and output, some execution environment constraints. So as you go through the process, you are the one that knows how the software was written, or at least we assume that you are familiar with the original logic of the program. So you're the one that needs to feed these additional constraints or parameters so that the AI engine can specifically focus on those nuances of the program. And then also validate language-specific constructs like memory management differences. You know that Python has virtually no memory management at all. That's the reason that it's so user-friendly versus, for example, C++, which is not as bad as C, but still is a language that you must take care of memory management very accurately. Then you also have type safety and static versus dynamic typing and threading or asynchronous patterns. So these things will vary from one programming language to another. Having said that, I'll show you a real life case. This is an application in Python for an HTTP API that I had the need to use. Let me introduce the case. It was a customer project where the requirement was to have a remote access management tool and control application. It's a desktop application, desktop format that must run on Windows and Mac OS. Running on Linux would be a nice to have feature. The remote access solution that this customer is using is AnyDesk. This is one of the 3 top companies for remote access. It's a company based in Germany. Is being created by some of the ex-employees of Teamware, which was also a very popular remote access application. They want to keep the current remote access solution as much as possible. In other words, they want first to find out if AnyDesk can offer this manageability and customization of control that they want. First and foremost. So if AnyDesk is able to add these features, then perfect. They'll rather stay with them rather than being forced to use another one. Well, it turns out after the project analysis and assessment has been done, turns out that AnyDesk does have a very powerful and flexible REST API. So basically anything that you can do through their web page, the administration web page, to control remote sessions, remote users, and whatnot, all of that is fully available through a REST API. These functions satisfy my customer needs and exceed the needs. So there is future expansion possible. But the only caveat that I had found is that all the source code is in Python. So everything that proves all these features and bells and whistles is in Python. So there was nothing readily available in Delphi so that I can just plug and play and use it. Okay, so this is a project that they have published in GitHub. This is the sample source code for their API. Downloaded the code and take a look at it. They have this classes definition for client. They call it client any connecting user. So any desktop computer or any computing device that can install a remote access thing is a client. They also have classes for the sessions, which is the sessions established between originator and a receiver. You can see all of this is in Python. And the key part of all of these is a central unit called the API, where they concentrate all the actual requests that you can do. So this is like the front end or connector. This is API on the client side. So this Python class, this Python API, you can call it, and it's been Pythonized. So you just call Python functions that will, underneath the hoods, call the raw HTTP REST API, and then do the translation and conversion, and then give you back all the results in a Python format. Now, let me just see. I'm showing you the contents of this unit because I'll be focusing on this one specifically. Since this is the connector, I'm not so interested in the classes defined in Python because I don't like the way Python defines the classes. I'm more keen on taking a look on how this API unit of code has been created so I can convert that to Delphi. And then once I have it working, then I can create my new classes in Delphi the way I want. But the key thing that will save me some time is if I can convert this specific connector, the API code from Python to Delphi. So first, here, one of the sample applications that he introduced, they call it sample clients. This simple application calls the API unit, gathers some set of clients from the AnyDesk system, and then dumps it into the screen. I'll show you right now how it works. You run this program, and then starts dumping different sets of clients that were gathered through the API. So this is one of the sample applications. Another sample application is one that will gather active sessions from the AnyDesk API. There's another simple application just to get some statistics on the sessions. Okay, fair enough. There's a lot more over there, but I go back to the key one that I was mentioning to you, the one that has the API, the actual API. So the first thing that I notice is that the code that they had is a bit outdated. The company has already introduced an API version 2. The one that is in GitHub is for version 1 of the API. Is still active, but is no longer maintained because now they are focusing on the new version 2. They still don't have published any code for the version 2. So I had to do some manual changes just to make the Python code work from the version 1 to version 2. There's no reason to convert a program for a version that is going to be fade out by the vendor. So here you have the same code. I have removed some of the parts that no longer are needed for version 2, especially in the authorization schema. They made it much simpler. But anyhow, this will be in the source code that I will provide to you as a test. But the first thing was, this is not part of my presentation, but I had to do that, is migrate the Python code itself to work with version 2 of the API. So once that was working, you can see here, browsing the code, you may not be able to see any difference, but anyhow, this is the key unit that I've been focusing after converting it to version 2 of the AnyDesk protocol. Sorry about that. I'm repeating myself here. Okay, then I went into ChatGPT. I would say that any of the 3 top generative AIs out there is good enough, but I've been working mainly with ChatGPT for the last 2-3 years. So I'll show you this, but the concepts that I will show to you apply to any of the large language models, generative AI out there. So as you can see here, number one, I'm uploading that single unit in Python, the file that you see at the top called anydesk underscore API.py. Then I'm instructing ChatGPT, given the Python source code in the attached file, convert it to Object Pascal suitable to compile with Embarcadero Delphi. You may find that this is a little bit verbose, but any of you that have already used ChatGPT, that is the way to go. You cannot assume anything, even though these things are very powerful and have a huge database of data and knowledge behind them. They are like a baby. You need to be very clear and informative about what you want in order to get the best results. And here is where the interactive part comes of this process. It's not a dumb tool that you just click a button and it'll dump it out. No, you need to be very clear on what you want from the tool. So here you can see the code that it gave me here. First is a program. So it converted that code, even though the code itself, I will not say it's not ChatGPT's fault. Python makes it very difficult to differentiate a unit from a program, because that's the way Python is. Actually, a unit file in Python can also be a program at the same time. Those that know Python know what I'm talking about. So the first thing that ChatGPT did is it thought it was a self-contained program, and it gave me an Object Pascal program. But that's not what I need. So what I had to do is tell it, okay, here is, I told you, you can see the small prompt at the top, make the previous program a Delphi unit file. Then immediately it converted it to a unit, and oh voila, it did it the right way. It correctly broke it down into the interface section and the implementation section. It is worth mentioning to all of you that since I started using these conversion tools, the progress has been dramatic. In my first conversion tool that I had to do about 2 years ago, this process just to get something nice, I had to add a lot more of instructions to give something realistic. But nowadays, it's almost in 1 or 2 iterations, you get something that works out of the box. Okay, so now that I had this unit provided by ChatGPT, I feed it into Delphi. So here's the unit. I have my unit converted. I didn't touch it. I just did copy paste and created a console application in Delphi. The only thing I had to do is create the program part. So here you see the program. It's very simple. I'm just adding simple code to get the key token, the authorization token that I must gather from a file in order to call the API. And then the code, you can see very simple on the bottom. I'm creating the API object and then calling the sample function that gathers all clients. Now, does it work? Oh, I compile it and I got this error. Value list. It did compile, but when running, it gave a runtime error. Value list not found. After spending some minutes checking what happened, I noticed that this red line over there is extracting JSON data from an array called list. But there is no list in the original Python file. In the original Python file, all the internal functions that are extracting the data, they always call a JSON field called items. So you can see that even with the power of these things, and even all the information was in the Python source code, it still made a mistake. It put list, but I couldn't find any single variable name or whatnot in the original Python file that even is named list. So this is clearly a bug in the AI conversion model itself. But no, don't feel bad. The good thing about AI is that self-correctable. You just tell it that they did a mistake, something you can't do with any other tool out there. So after fixing that bug, just put in items instead of list, it did compile. And this is what I got when running the Delphi application. So other than that one bug, it works. It worked immediately. So I got my simple conversion now. Then I go back to ChatGPT and I told it, you can see on the prompt at the top, there is a bug in your results. The line where you call get value to JSON array, blah, 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 should be get value JSON array items instead. Fix that line and give me a modified version using a REST client instead of an HTTP client. I noticed that the code they gave me is using the old-fashioned HTTP client, which only works in Windows. REST client is the way to go nowadays because REST client is supported in all platforms by Delphi. So in one single prompt, I'm instructing ChatGPT two things at the same time. Number one, I'm telling it about the bug that I manually fixed. And again, you need to be verbose, otherwise it won't understand exactly what was the bug. So I had to be verbose on the specific get value tJSON array quote list quote, so you can find it immediately and then have a better learning process. Once I did that quote, ChatGPT said, thank you for the clarification. Here is the corrected Delphi unit with the bug fix. Change it list to items, and the modification switched from HTTP client to REST client and REST request from Delphi's REST components. You can see now the new code, the new unit that has been modified to use those new components. So I just go and copy paste into the unit file in my sample application in Delphi. That's all I had to do. I just replaced all the text on my unit file with exactly the text that ChatGPT gave me. So I did and modified nothing. It compiled, and then I run it. And voila, it worked. So ChatGPT fixed the bug. So the new unit that it gave me had two things in one. It's now been replaced to use the REST components and had the bug fixed by itself. But now I don't want to use those JSON fields directly in Delphi. It's very cumbersome. Like it or not, JSON is the way to go with web services. But once you have the data in your application, you rather have it in native Delphi records or classes, not in JSON components that you need to use all those methods and properties that are a bit cumbersome to work with in Delphi. So I told ChatGPT this time, modify the source code to assign each element extracted from the JSON array to a Delphi record. Add a record type called tClient with the necessary fields and include it in the code. Then ChatGPT is replying saying, here is the modified Delphi unit that defines a tClient record type, parses each JSON item into a tClient record, and stores the parsed records in a tlist tClient. You see that these things are powerful. I didn't ask it to include a tlist instead of the JSON array, but somehow, by the knowledge it has behind it, it knows that they go together. So immediately propose, since I'm going to change it to a Delphi record, then I'm going to use tlist instead to hold the records. So this is an added bonus from my request. So I just take the unit given back by ChatGPT as is. I do copy paste again into my test application. Oh, by the way, it also told me because of that change of tlist 8 nodes, you cannot call all clients to get a tlist. It knows that I will not get a printout as in the original Python conversion, which was simply dumping it out to the screen. So it's telling me, remember to do this, and it's giving me a snippet of code where I can iterate through the tlist of clients and then write them on the screen if I want to achieve the same result as the previous one, which is dump it out into the screen. So this was also an added benefit, an added bonus. I didn't ask for it, but it said, okay, since I did that change, then I'm going to suggest you to do this change as well if you want the same results as the previous one. So I incorporated two things. So number one, I do copy paste of the full unit, the new unit using the record, the tClient record and tlist, and also add this small code snippet into the main application to iterate over the T list instead of relying on the self-printing behavior of the previous one. I compile it, compiles with no errors, then I run it again, and voila. You see the formatting is a bit different because the snippet that is looping over the T list is printing out in a different format, but it doesn't matter. The point is that it worked, and it worked out of the box the first time. And now I have a T client in a T list that I'm super happy to now start using on my Delphi application. So what is the lesson learned? Again, this is a completely different process compared to the previous ones. You are interacting with an AI model. You need to feed the function classes or whatever logical blocks one at a time. So it is easier for you to identify the potential errors, if any, or bugs, or improvement points. I just showcased to you that some of the feedback I had to do to ChatGPT was about real bugs. But other feedback I had to do is to fine tune whether the components that it chose to use were the right ones that I wanted. And last but not least, also do improvements. Okay, the original code was using JSON, but I don't want JSON. I want Delphi records instead. So this is the kind of interactive thing that you must do when talking to the AI engine. So I'm just repeating here the steps. I think it makes more sense to you now that I have shown a real life process. So overall, what I can share to you is that it took me no more than 2 days to do a full conversion of all the classes in the original Python code. And then I just focused on Delphi for another week, week and a half, and I had the project done in less than 2 weeks. If I had to start from scratch by trying all the API calls from this company, I would have the need to invest maybe another week just to get a simple program running in Delphi by proving that I can call the API points and get the data, which is what we had to do in the old days. But now what I'm proving is, thanks to AI, this process is much, much more improved. But bear in mind, you need to talk to the AI engine and you need to know what you are talking and asking it to do. So thank you for attending my presentation. Now we can go to question and answers.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to turn off that screen. There you go. So it's just us. It was great. It was an interesting presentation. I think this is where AI is really going to help. And in fact, let me just I'm going to change our screens around like this. There you go. Because I'm used to looking that way. Yeah, I think this is one of the areas where AI is really helpful, and it kind of plays into one of my little targets, really, as a developer advocate. And you've got people saying good presentation. There you go. You've got some fans, Miguel. Well, I'm your fan,
thanks.
and now you've got some others as well. Per Arne Lagaval says very good presentation, and Terry says brilliant presentation. There you go, brilliant. And Paul McGee is a little bit more laid back. He's like, nice. But Paul's a very good developer, by the way. So it's nice that he's complimentary. But one of the things that I want to try or what I'm trying to achieve as developer advocate is to about 2 years ago, the general manager he kind of asked me, what do you intend to do as developer advocate? What are your plans? And I wrote a big document with lots of headings on, I want to do this. I think we need to do this. Basically, Jim had his way of doing things, and David I had his way of doing things, and I wanted to kind of do what I thought worked. And one of those subjects, whoops, you're pointing at the floor or something, you suddenly disappeared. But I think the camera might have dropped, Miguel. But one of the things I wanted to do was go to all these SDKs and APIs that are out there, and it bugs me that every time you go to an API, there's no Delphi example. There's like a JavaScript version, there's a C# version, there's a C++ version, always a Python version because there's always something for Python. And I said to him, I wanted to call it, and it also works with Delphi. That was the title I put up there, and because that's what I wanted. I wanted to have it say JavaScript, C#, C++, Python, Delphi. Well, my tablet just made a weird noise in the background. And Delphi, and I wanted to get to the point where we could get some of the APIs out there that would also list Delphi examples, because I really think that's the secret. Is if you go to a new API or SDK or something like that, if you see an example in Delphi, two things happen. First of all, people stop saying nobody uses Delphi when actually millions of people use Delphi. So that stops that problem. The second thing is it makes more people go, wait, there's an example in Delphi. Let's see what it can do. And then I believe that the strength of Rad Studio and Delphi is obvious when you start to use it. When people that use it love it, you know. So that's the secret. Is it's a bit like giving someone free cake. You know, if you go to a wedding or something in the United States, or you arrange a wedding, you go to the cake shop and they give you free cake, which is the perfect. And of course, you try the cake and then you go, okay, I'm going to use these people, but there's an emotional thing, you know, like they gave me free cake, I owe them something. So, but also, you know, you want to use them because the cake tastes good, and it's the same thing. I think if people use Delphi, the advantages of it are quite obvious to people. And so I think what you did there, I kind of went around the houses to explain this, is really an example of what I want to do, which is to take Python examples, you know, and turn them, or at least get to the point where it reduces the amount of work needed to produce a Delphi version of something. And your presentation was really, really good. And in fact, the ones I've highlighted a few people, but there's more and more. I don't know whether you can see the chat window, but there's a whole bunch of people saying what a good presentation it was. Milan says, glad to see you emphasize the conversational approach with the large language model to refine your prompt until desired results are achieved. Was that the thing that you found was the secret? I mean, what did you? Because you kind of explained it's an evolutionary process for you, but do you think that was the secret? Is asking the right questions and giving it the right guidance, or?
Well, before I even answer this, I have news for everyone. Exactly what I did. I didn't want to introduce technicalities, but exactly what I did now is technically called prompt engineering, which means
Right.
how do you articulate your prompts when feeding them to the AI engine. So the way you articulate them becomes critical in order to get the right results, because you are basically orienting or pushing the AI towards the results that you want. In other words, the AI is powerful, but as I said, it has this humongous amount of data behind it. But in order to resolve what you want, it's like a baby. You need to steer it continuously until you nail it down to the way you want to go. And that you do it with the prompts. And you see nowadays, many universities are introducing masters on prompt engineering or specializations on prompt engineering. So didn't want to introduce that technical word, that token, but that's exactly what you do. In layman terms, what I just did is, as a programmer, is try to find out what the AI engine is doing and where it is going the way I want. So you could see that from the first time, other than the bug, it was a workable example, but it's not what I wanted. I didn't want the old HTTP client that only works on Windows. And at the end, I didn't want just JSON fields to use on my application. I want field Delphi records and fields. So it's a simple example, but of course it can become more and more complicated. I just gave you the introduction and the basic idea of how to do it. But you are the expert, not the AI engine. That's the key thing. AI engine is not a do-it-all solution. It's just a powerful tool but you are in command.
And would you say that going, in future work, you're always going to lean towards AI? Do you think it's become part of your daily kind of, or not daily maybe, but I mean regular sort of tool that you will turn to, or is it? Do you think there are certain areas where it's going to be very useful, but generally speaking, it's not, you know, the tool that you're going to use?
Well, that is a good question. And I'll repeat myself again. Since you are the one in command, those AI tools won't do any good if you are not there to steer it to the right place. Now, I did see some big progress from in just 2 years. That prompt engineering that I did on this presentation was many people would say, oh, that looks like a piece of cake, pretty simple to do. But 2 years ago, I had to do a lot more prompting and add a lot more of information because the results were not as good and they were buggy. So it took me maybe 5 to 10 iterations until I got something that worked out of the box and compile and give me results on Delphi. But nowadays,
Yeah,
it was almost the first time that it gave me something workable. So these engines are progressing every day at a very
yeah,
high speed that beyond us. But
yeah.
you're
I
still in
think that,
command.
yeah, I mean, I think that's really true. Is that if people have tried them, a year ago and thought, nah, they're no good. It's a moving target. They are evolving. It's like the history of the world. I mean, depending on your religious point of view, but we've evolved from, basic
Right.
proto-humans to what we are now. I mean, some people don't believe that's true, but I personally, I think we did start out as, very basic mammals and then have evolved from that point of view. And I think it's the same with the AI, that they started out as good, impressive, but they've gone beyond that and they're getting even better. And I think also what's happening is that we're seeing really what you can do with these, and it's making people understand that actually it's worth pursuing, the evolution of these things to take them to the next steps, because we're only really at the very beginning of what's possible. My dog is rolling around in the background. Look at him, he's crazy. But uh yeah, okay then, yeah. But yeah, it is true that what you may try now may be even better in 6 months time. What of the, because you talked about multiple engines, what would you say is your preferred engine? What do you think works the best for you? Was it Chat GPT, because that was the one you were mentioning in your
Well,
talk?
I would say that when I started, there was no choice. It was ChatGPT, the only workable choice. And that I would say that's the main reason I keep using it. Maybe I have the subscription and because I'm used to how it does. But I've been working with a friend that prefers Claude. And Claude in the last 6 months is almost at the same level. And what I would be eager to try, because I haven't done it with these kind of projects, is try DeepSeek, see what comes out of it. I know it won't be as good, but just to do some
Well, you
simple
don't know.
benchmarking.
I mean, this is the thing about these models, is that, I mean, a lot of people think that Claude is better with Delphi code. I've heard several people say that, but I don't know because I haven't tried enough of it. I'm too busy doing this kind of stuff, but I haven't tried enough of it to actually say yes, it is or it isn't. But everybody seems to have their favorite flavor, and it depends on how much money they've invested, in a subscription as well. But a lot of people said Claude is very good with Delphi. I don't know, and I hopefully, all of the engines will get better with Delphi. Lot of people commenting on your. Honestly, you've got a whole ton of people saying, what a great example it was. Great example of how to convert tons of API supportable libraries from Python, JavaScript, C# to Delphi. Yes, and it gives me some hope that we can actually help catch up a little bit,
Yeah.
because things in the last year they've really picked up for Delphi, and it's great. And some people, they're more brief about what they're giving you the applause there. They're giving you the thumbs up. So but one man who is complimenting you is Dr. Kevin Bond. Now there's a man who knows his stuff, and he said great presentation. So high praise indeed. uh, and as Jeff says, I mean, our expectations are increasing as well. Yes, the language models get more competent and more accurate and give better answers based on our better prompts, but our expectations of the results are increasing as well. So for a lot of cases, it's going to be a hard struggle for some of these engines because now we just go, oh, of course it creates a 4-minute video of, Nelson Mandela singing reggae or something, yeah, of course it does that, as if it was not the most incredibly magical thing you've ever seen. It's, you showed an example there of converting an
Yeah.
API and the large language
And by the
model
way,
did.
Ian, one thing I need to add on this is number one, the AI engine, again, it is powerful, but it's like a baby. You need to steer it. But number two, it's a learning tool. That's something we never had. Now that you mentioned about Claude versus ChatGPT, uh, I I've seen that Claude is heavily used in Europe, and of course, it leans toward having the chance of more Delphi users being using Claude. My personal experience when I started using ChatGPT, it gave me a lot of flaws about Delphi code. But as I did my prompt engineering to tell it where it was wrong and how to fix it, and as it did it for me, I seldom saw those same bugs again when reusing
Right.
ChatGPT with similar projects. So that is something so amazing. These things keep learning. And that's why maybe you read the news about 8, 10 months ago that some Samsung guys fed their whole project to ChatGPT to find some bugs or streamline it. And suddenly that same code was being given as a sample to other guys, users of the same ChatGPT, because the guys
Yeah.
didn't think that it's learning from it, and then it uses that as a reference for other guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is one of the biggest fears for people is that, and I compared this to Kentucky Fried Chicken, which has their thing where it says secret blend of herbs and spices, which is great, but it's the same thing. You've got, if there's something in your code that is your unique selling point about your program, and ChatGPT gets trained on your unique selling point, your secret blend of herbs and spices, then a guy down the road can be you and create you. And it's the same. If Kentucky Fried Chicken is staffed enough to give away their secret blend of herbs and spices to ChatGPT, there's nothing to stop me in a chicken shop down the road going, tell me what would be a great combination of secret herbs and spices. And it goes, here's the recipe, and all of a sudden I'm making good chicken. So, I
Yeah,
mean, I'm not so sure Kentucky Fried Chicken is that great that I would want to copy it, but,
yeah.
it's good.
And
But I tell
and
you,
there's an yeah,
you
and there's
know,
another thing that I made it very clear on the guidelines is even they are powerful, don't don't overestimate your expectations. Don't feed a full-blown application to the thing. Don't do that because it will give you a complete mess of code. So you need to feed it workable pieces of code that you yourself can verify and check whether it's going the way you want. If you just fill the full app with a full set of units, it may give you something that may compile, but you have no way whether it's doing what you wanted because it's so much code to check that it's not workable. And that is the flaw that those Samsung guys did. They fed a complete application. So I don't know if they achieved what they wanted, but in the act of doing that, they exposed the whole monolithic code to be used as a sample by
yeah.
ChatGPT to other users. So that's the
Well,
risk. Don't do that.
actually, the comment that I put down below is a good example of someone where Olama is local, and you can train it locally. So you download the model, and the model runs locally, and then you can, they're saying the Quen 2.5 coder engine. It's not what I've got experience of myself, but they're saying it's got specific tweaks for Pascal. Great. If that's true, that would be awesome. And they said, I often find ChatGPT code does not compile with Olama something. It even does conventions and stuff like that. So it doesn't just give you code, but it uses coding conventions, that we all, most of our MVPs write very similar code
And
to each other.
talking about conventions, I have an experience on one of my early results. Yeah, about that was back in October. One of the early results, it was giving me all the code that I like, but everything was a local variable with a simple name, just like with Python or everything else.
A or B or
Then I
something.
said,
Yeah.
could you please add the L to every local variable as a Delphi convention? Then I said, oh, sorry about that. He gave me the exact same code with all local variables put into L. Said, from now on, I will stick to the Delphi's convention. And since then, I don't need to tell it. Every code I get
Wow.
back, that's the L on the local
I
variables.
didn't know it did that. I didn't know that level of learning was built in. That's actually very impressive. And the thing is, most MVPs, all of us tend to code very similar ways. We've worked in different places and we've absorbed the standards that are really the convention. And you can usually tell someone that's done coding at a certain level for a long time because of those conventions. But yeah, it's interesting. Nothing bugs me more than having a variable that's A, I, and B or something like that. You know, like, oh, you use descriptive names. It makes your code much more readable.
Yeah,
Milan
right.
says, in a general sense, I try to remember to tell my large language model about things that improve the response, so long as it isn't proprietary. This helps everybody that needed information. Well, you can choose not to. I believe some of them allow you to say, don't train on my material. But I think it's a good point of view is to say, actually, I think it's a kind of collective gain here that if we at least allow it to train on some of the things, it helps everybody overall. And that's what we want, right? Is we all want to have those large language models get better because, collective knowledge is, 50 heads are better than one, as long as they're the right heads. But I think it's a very interesting topic. And so many people commenting and saying what a great presentation you did, Miguel. I mean, you always terrify me because always at the last minute, like, I'll do it live. I'm like, no. but I know you well enough. You're a good guy, and we talk behind the scenes on we work on all sorts of things together from time to time and stuff like that. But I really appreciate, and a lot of people love that presentation. So thanks very much. So we're gonna move on. So I'll say goodbye to you. So Jeff is saying ChatGPT has memory and now even uses previous conversations in your account. Oh, yeah, it's not long. The singularity will come, and you and I, Miguel, will both be obsolete. We'll be stuck in a cage by an AI-powered robot with Tesla written on it or something like that.
Yeah,
What I
yeah,
think will happen, by the way, one thing that will happen is I believe someone out here must be doing it, which is these kind of forums that we're on now. We use Restream should be able to listen to how I speak and listen to you speak in Spanish. I assume you speak Spanish as your first language, is that right?
yeah.
Spanish. Yeah. So what I think will happen is that I will speak English, you'll speak Spanish, but you'll choose what language you want it broadcast in when you're a viewer. So you'll say, I want to hear them both speak Spanish or even Brazilian Portuguese. And so we will speak to each other in the language that we feel most able to express in. The AI will listen to us and then convert that into whatever language the viewer wants. And it will dub the lips because there are apps out there now, mobile apps, that can take my lips, hear what I say, and then convert me to speaking fluent Chinese, for example, Mandarin Chinese. And it moves the lips as well. And so you would be speaking Spanish, I'd be speaking English, and someone else would be watching and listening in Danish. So, these things are the brave new world we're coming into. So
Well, your dream has come true. In the Apple WWDC conference last week, they announced that FaceTime, before the end of this year, they will introduce that feature.
I didn't
It will
I
be
didn't
live
watch all the
translation.
stuff. I was unfortunately at a conference. I watched some of the WWD stuff. I love Apple. I mean, I have an Apple Watch. I have a Mac over that way, and I mean, they have half my bank account in their
Yeah.
bank account
Well,
now.
they
But
announced that this year they will introduce it in FaceTime. So exactly what you said
yeah,
will be a reality if they achieve their deadline.
I have an Android phone, and if I watch now, as well as an iPhone. I've got an iPhone as well. But with the Android phone, if someone puts up an Instagram post or something like that, I can hold down my home button and then it freezes the screen, and then there's a little thing I can click there and it translates all the text on the screen, including text in images and on people's t-shirts and things like that. It's quite incredible. And he detects it, and it's all AI based, so it's pretty amazing stuff,
Clever. Yep.
We're good stuff. Okay, all right. Well, thanks a lot, Miguel, and I will speak to you another time. We're going to go on to the next person now.
Thanks all of you
Adios.
for attending the presentation. I hope it will be helpful for all of you.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people really like that. Speak to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.